create content for Black audiences. I help facilitate the creation of content for Black audiences. My company is called BlackOakTV. We basically create, curate, and distribute content that is designed to tell stories that reflect the lives and experiences of Black people in the United States and across the globe.
But how did you decide to just create your own network?
There are things that, like so many other aspects of society, that just make things a little bit harder for certain people. So Black content on YouTube is not considered as necessarily getting as well monetized as other forms of content because advertisers aren't necessarily as interested in targeting that audience. The sales team isn't as good at going out there and selling those Black audiences against those channels that are largely bringing in Black eyeballs. We have this creator with 10 million fans that does cooking, or this creator that has 5 million fans and does science. And unfortunately, some of those first several campaigns largely left Black creators out of it. They're more likely to get downvoted, and their video might not do as well just because there's a bigger audience that's not interested in what they're doing that exists on the platform. People are interested in making money, and if you can show them how you potentially can do it, there's likely someone out there who will agree with your thesis.
Well, Uzo, I appreciate you joining today. Look forward to hearing kind of what you have to offer listeners. But wanted to start just by asking, in general, what is it that you do and why do you do it?
Yeah, so basically I create content for Black audiences. Or better said, I help facilitate the creation of content for Black audiences. So my company is called BlackOakTV. We basically create, curate, and distribute content that is designed to tell stories that reflect the lives and experiences of Black people in the United States and across the globe. So ultimately, it's my job to try and find the storytellers who know their audience, want to speak to their audience, and are just looking for the resources to do it, and make sure that I can connect them with a group of people, a community of people that wants those stories, that feels like they've been neglected by traditional media, other forms of media, and haven't been able to see themselves represented on TV and video in the way that they like. So, I get to go out and meet awesome storytellers. I get to read amazing stories, see amazing stories, and also talk to the people who are just excited about watching TV about Black characters and Black life experiences as much as I am.
That's awesome. And it's just kind of looking at your background, and we can dive into it a little bit, but how did you decide to just create your own network? Like, a lot of people have this idea that they want to see more Black representation, especially in the media, but how did you literally created your own network to do it?
Yeah, basically, it just came from really being a student of the industry, seeing everything that was going out there, and understanding that this was probably the best way to solve for the problem that there wasn't enough Black content out there. So I worked in media my whole life, started off as a journalist, ended up moving into production and TV and radio, and that moved on to doing some consulting for media companies, then ultimately ended up like at a big company like YouTube, where I was working on the content team. And throughout all of that time, it was always, my goal to try and see more of our faces on the screen in these places, on these big platforms and mediums, and it just wasn't happening. And I think it was when I got to the last place I was at, which was YouTube, and thinking, hey, here I am, I'm in Silicon Valley, the democratization of the internet. We have, all these well-meaning liberal people who want to do the right thing, and yet we were still seeing issues with Black people getting their fair shake on YouTube. Creators feeling like they weren't necessarily getting the same monetization or even viewership opportunities that their counterparts were. And so it was just, really obvious to me that the only way you were going to see Black stories accurately reflected in the medium was if you had a company that was 100% focused on that audience. Because if you simply just think about it from purely a business perspective, and Lord knows there's a lot of other stuff that goes into how these decisions get made. But
Mhm.
just from a business perspective, if you have if you have a show and it costs you $5 million and it's going to reach 60% of America, and you have another show and it costs you $5 million, but it's only going to reach 10% of America, the one that makes more sense is the one that's going to reach more people. And if time after time after time you're presented with those opportunities or those dichotomies, you are more or less going to always lean towards picking the one that is going to reach more of a mass audience. And that means the niche audience, the minority, is often going to be left out and underrepresented on these platforms. The most logical way to fix that was to say, hey, let's have a network that is 100% focused on the Black audience. The same way ESPN said, hey, there's not enough sports on the 11 o'clock news, so let's
Yeah.
create a network where all we care about are sports fans. So that's basically what we're doing with Black Oak TV. By no means are we the first to think about this. BET was obviously the ultimate pioneer from a TV perspective. Before that, you had magazines like Jet and Ebony, and you even have some smaller streamers that are in the business that we're into. We're taking a slightly different approach to it, but more or less the same idea. Like we want to focus 100% on this audience, and we believe that there are enough of them that are passionate about Black stories and Black characters where we can build a big business out of it.
Man, that's awesome. Is the concerns about the that equal representation legitimate whenever it comes to, and you don't have to get into the specifics, but when we think about YouTube, it's supposedly like this independent platform, right? Where I'm just putting my content out there and then fans of whatever that could be would find it. Is there truly an issue of underrepresentation and this push towards other content creators?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, that is how YouTube works. But there are things that, you know, like so many other aspects of society that just make things a little bit harder for certain people. So, for example, Black content on YouTube is not considered as necessarily getting as well monetized as other forms of content because advertisers aren't necessarily as
Mm,
interested in targeting that audience, or the sales team isn't as good at going out there and selling those Black audiences against those channels that are largely bringing in Black eyeballs. And then YouTube has these things, has these campaigns sometimes, especially when they're trying to court advertisers. They'll say, "Hey, we have this creator with 10 million fans that does cooking, or this creator that has 5 million fans and does science." And unfortunately, some of those first several campaigns, largely left Black creators out of it, and so those people get publicized and get put on Madison Avenue and subways, and so the advertisers are trying to court them, and they have all these additional opportunities that are brought by that exposure of a big giant company like YouTube and Google going out and promoting these voices. So that ends up tipping the scales too. So it's little things here and there. And then there are just some natural biases, right? Like if people on the platform are turned off by a Black creator that is speaking about something that they're not interested in, they're more likely to get downvoted, and their video might not do as well, just because there's a bigger audience that's not interested in what they're doing that exists on the platform. So there are lots of little things, and believe me, YouTube is doing their best to address those things
right.
in great deal, and so I know they mean well, but there's just a lot of work to do, and there's only so much you can do when you have to cater to 2 billion people as your entire audience.
Well, then how, and I want to touch on the dichotomy that you mentioned in two ways. There's the idea that you're only going to reach 10% of the population. How did you get like venture capital funding for a business that's such a narrow niche market?
Yeah, I mean, I often use the term niche, but I think the truth is like it's much bigger than that, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, anything that is 10%, and I'm just talking about the United States market. Anything that's 10 and really 12, 13% of the US market is a huge opportunity. And
Right.
so from that framework, it's still pretty big. And so when you do the back of the envelope math, it's still a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. So quite frankly, it wasn't that hard to bring that to VCs. The thing for them was more about the competition and how we compete against these other things.
Okay.
But there's definitely the math out there. I mean, there are almost 20 million Black households out there. If you think about it, Comcast as a cable company, I think they reach about 20 million households or something like that. So it's definitely a very big opportunity if we can, delight those customers.
And then the second piece of that would be from the advertiser's standpoint. So does your network, and I guess maybe we should start with the framework of how Black Oak TV works, but are you trying to connect those advertisers to particular programs as well? And then are you having to
Yeah,
sell that to them?
yeah. So Black Oak TV is a streaming platform. People tell me not to make this comparison, but I'm making it anyway. It's like Netflix, but
Right.
specifically for Black people, focusing on Black content, so people can come to our platform. We have a website, we have mobile apps, we have apps on Roku and Amazon and Google, and you can download those and you subscribe to our platform for $6.99 per month, and you get access to all of our shows. And that's fairly simple, just like Netflix, just like Paramount, Showtime, all those things out there. We don't have ads yet, so we don't have a free ad supported platform. We don't have a ad light program that you pay subscription price for. It's strictly subscription right now. Down the road, I think we will definitely be involved in ads in some form or fashion. I'd say right now we want to stay away from that for as long as possible,
Yeah.
mainly because I know from working at a big company at Google, like how intensive that is, how all consuming you can be when everything is about driving revenue through ads. And the fact that at that point in time, you also become a business to business to consumer company as opposed to a business to consumer company, because now as much as you want to be worried about your viewers, you also have to be worried about your advertisers, and your advertisers are the one paying you. So really your customer is the advertiser. And because of the nature of what we're doing, I think it's very important that our customer be the Black audience, first and foremost. And once we fully understand that, once we've learned enough about them and what they want from us as a platform, then hopefully we can start to pivot to bringing in advertisers and offering diversity of experiences for folks at all different price points.
That's a powerful insight. Like you don't think about it in the terms of once you have an advertiser, like that becomes your primary focus as the business because that's who you're trying to fulfill, the needs of.
I mean, it's true. They're the ones that pay your bills, and
Yeah.
so if you don't give them what they want, you're not going to be able to have the money to run your business, to serve the viewers the content that they need. I mean, it's the truth of it. And again, I don't begrudge anybody. I mean, that's how TV has worked for the longest, and since its invention, it was founded on advertising. So there's nothing wrong with it. You can definitely service your customer and your advertisers at the same time. But I think it is certainly a lot easier to do that when you are a bigger company that really understands your customer. And I think we're just so early on in the process that we
Yeah.
still have a lot of learning to do about what our customers want. And we don't have enough people at the company to really divide our attention between focusing on our subscribers and focusing on our advertisers. So for right now, we're focused on the former, and we hope to later on down the line bring in advertisers as well to do what I think will make for even a better experience on Black Oak TV.
How are you curating the content for the network? Is it something where you're and maybe your team is identifying opportunities or creators that would fit, or how is it kind of based on user demand? What's the process like?
Yeah, I wish we could say we had like this really amazing process. A lot of it is, our own gut intuition. I got into this because I love Black content. I'm a kid of the 90s. I grew up at a
Yeah.
time where there was, a lot of awesome shows on broadcast television that, Black people and non people alike were watching in spades. So I love this stuff. I watch a lot of TV, probably too much TV. And so I try to bring my sensibilities and those that I know to the conversation. But also having worked at YouTube and in big tech, like I definitely really appreciate the numbers and the data that goes into it. So it's a mix of both. We work, for example, with a lot of YouTube creators. And so we'll go out to them, to the ones that we feel, make them the most sense for us from a business perspective and say, hey, these folks have a big audience. We see that people are, really in love with the shows that they're making. They're selling t-shirts. So we know the folks that come to them don't mind, paying for the stuff that this creator has to offer, that they have this direct relationship that engenders that trust to buy from them. And then, we can actually look at the content they have and say, hey, what is most in demand, what looks really cool, what has an opportunity to grow into a bigger story just from this one video that you made into a series of videos that could make up a TV show. So we mix that data with the art to try and come up with the best slate that we can. And I would say no decision is like the other
Mhm.
exactly, but for the most part, we're really just trying to, first break down the ones that make the most sense from a numbers perspective, and then among those, trying to say, okay, how can we bring the most creative, most awesome, amazing content out of what's available to us here to make something that we think our audiences will love.
And then once that's identified, what's the production like? Do you guys have your own studio or is it kind of left up to the creators to create that product?
Yeah, so for the most part, so when we're working with creators, they are, you know, almost fully responsible for the production, right? So we're giving them the resources they need, but they are managing it. So if you think about someone, um, like if you think about BET and their relationship with Tyler Perry, right? Like for
Mm.
the most part, they're giving Tyler Perry the resources he needs, and that's really capital. And then he turns around and does what he needs. He's a producer. He produces the content. That's what we're doing. We're working out with these creators who are generally their own producers or work with other producers and they create their content. Now, some things we do create in house, and so that's us just putting together our own production team to go out and create these things in the wild. So we don't have an actual physical studio, but we'll go on location, get spots for us, rent them out, borrow them, whatever it may be. But we'll buy our own equipment and things like that. So there's no physical studio, but we do make the production by contracting a team of folks to go out and make something that is directly of our own creation. But most of the content we do is from our creators, whom are largely creating those things almost independently and hiring their own teams and producing the work outside of BlackOakTV.
That's pretty cool. Is that a standard operating procedure for like with maybe another streaming service, or I mean, that's different than how TV has always worked in the past, right? I mean, is this kind of how it works now, or is this different?
No, I mean that's more or less how it works. Like TV is more or less broken down into three things. It is, or I should say, video is broken down into
Mm.
three things. Content is broken down into three things, if we're being honest. So there's the distributor. So there's the company that has the relationship with the end user. There is the aggregator. So it is this tastemaker who says, hey, this content is good, that content is bad. I'm gonna bring the best of it here on my service. And then you have the creator, the person who actually creates the content. So for example, if you go back to the Tyler Perry example, he's the independent producer, he's the creator, he creates something. Then BET says, hey, that's really awesome. We want to bring you in. By the way, we're also buying a bunch of content from other producers, and that allows us to create a channel called BET. And then BET goes out to Cablevision and Time Warner, or the other cable companies out there, and says, hey, I would like you to carry BET. And then Comcast will go out there and say, hey, we'll say go out to consumers and say, hey, we have BET and ESPN and CBS and NBC. Would you like to pay us money for access to these channels? And so it actually is pretty bifurcated. Now, a lot of that sometimes get verticalized. So you have in some cases you have the distribution company owning the aggregator, and the aggregator hiring the creator to be in-house. So it can be in different combinations, but generally it is divided into those three things. So we're not that nuanced. I'd say the probably the more interesting thing about the way that we're doing it, right, is that we don't have an actual uh studio, and that we're also kind of combining the distribution and the aggregation into one place, which is again not unlike what Netflix does.
Why do they not want you to use the term Netflix whenever you're comparing?
Well, whenever I talk to somebody who's advising me or somebody in PR or whatever, people giving me advice, and they'll say, "Oh, don't compare yourself to other companies. Talk about how you're different."
Okay.
Not, I don't disagree with it, but I
Right.
do know like the magic of like trying to easily uh, tell people what you do, and sometimes those comparisons help. But perhaps that's me taking the lazy way out and not fully explaining what it is we do on our own.
No, I mean, I think no, I agree with you. I think there's a good balance there of like it's a quick way to say let someone know exactly what you're doing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, people already. It's not like you're giving attention to a competitor. I mean, people already know what Netflix is. So
Right.
how is what is the maybe they're the same thing, but how is like this streaming era now that kind of with cord cutting and things like that different or the same from just typical content creation that we see, or like what is this streaming era and how's it changing the way we find entertainment?
It's a good question. I'd say the main thing is that it's allowing people to watch what they want to watch. And to be honest, streaming is just the current iteration of that. If you go back 70 years, we just had three channels on TV, right? And then all of a sudden, the VCR came, and so now you could, have on-demand viewing to some extent. And then you had cable come, and it's like, okay, now you have hundreds and eventually thousands of channels with cable and satellite growing over those decades. And now the internet and streaming is basically saying, okay, hey, here are a million things, even more so, to be honest, to choose from that you can watch at any time. And we're creating these algorithms that get to learn what you like and recommend what you like to you so that you can easily find the stuff that you like. So I think the main thing that it's doing is it is allowing us to watch the things that we engage with the most. And it's really making it so that us as a whole, as a country, as a world, are no longer watching the same things.
Mm.
We're not sharing the same experiences in TV, which has pros and cons to it. Certainly on the pro side, people get more of what they want. People that feel like their stories aren't told can come to a place like Black Oak TV and find those stories being told. And also on the flip side, creators who may not have had an easy path through Hollywood because their stories weren't what the masses wanted. Now they have aggregators and distributors who are interested in their stories. And so now it allows for even more stories to be told by more storytellers. So that's on the pro side. But on the con side, it means, we don't all watch the same news programs. We watch 8 shows and what 8 episodes of one show in one night, and our friends watch it a month later, and so now we never talk about those things
All
in
right.
the way that we used to. So I think that is unfortunate in a lot of ways, but I think over time, some of that can be solved through technology, through creative ways of releasing content, and we hope to do some of that. But some of it is just, hey, things like TikTok exist, right, where people are watching little 15-second clips of exactly what they want, and you get it over and over again. And so I think that's the way we're going no matter what. And so it's best to see how we can improve and make that experience as positive as possible.
Is is it really like the end user's attention? Like when you think about competition, and I had someone phrase this to me in a way that I hadn't thought of before. Like my businesses are in like home services. So your competition isn't always like necessarily another plumber or another heating and air person. It's whatever that homeowner was going to spend that money on. Right. So for in media, do you consider the competition like whatever the end user was going to spend their attention on, whether that be social media or a different streaming service? And then how do you then market yourself? Because that's something, even in this format of a podcast, like the promotion of it is different than anything I've experienced in the past when the thing you're promoting is the thing that the people are seeing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. We live in an attention economy,
Yeah.
and I think that's just the fact of it. I mean, the fact that you have this podcast and are communicating with people, like you're stealing viewers away from Netflix and from Black Oak TV, as well as from radio stations and Spotify. So that is what it is, right? There are only so many hours in a day.
Right.
People can only consume so much. And so, and then on top of that, you have these massive platforms like Google and Facebook and Netflix and Disney and Fortnite that are consuming so much of everyone's time that for up and comers, for new entrants, new companies like us,
Mm-hmm.
it is harder to break in there. I'd say, to your point about how you do that. I mean, you I think unfortunately you have to go to the big companies where the attention is at, right? So you have to go to TikTok, you have to go to Instagram, you have to go to YouTube, you have to go on their platforms, on their mediums, and basically try to break through, try to get attention where all the attention is being held, and take a little bit of time to try and convince people, perhaps in one moment, perhaps over many moments, that they should check out what you have. And then your goal is just when you do get them to your site, when you do get them to your platform, you have to win them over. And so in some cases, you have to win them over and over and over again, because when they return to the big attention realms, somebody else is going to be vying for their time yet again. So it's very hard. Now, I think on the flip side, like if you have an awesome product, it's going to do well in the attention economy, right? Like
Right.
people reward things that they like, things that are cool, things that help people and bring value. Those are going to be rewarded. But it's still hard. But I think the truth is it's always been hard. I mean, I think before the only way to break through was to make a $500,000 commercial and spend millions of dollars in ads on TV, or to do a classified ad in the newspaper. So I think those were really hard ways to build businesses too. So right now it just comes down to how creative you can be in these spaces and how compelling of a product you have.
Thanks for that explanation because I feel like that was really helpful for me at least. And how has your thoughts on it changed, I guess, whenever you go from working at like a big tech company to now running a VC backed business? Like how have you had to change in your approach to media as a whole, or just kind of your approach to what you're doing for work? 'Cause I mean, it's in the same line, but it's a very different way of doing it, right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as my approach to media, I guess I would say my perspective isn't changed. Like I think I've
Right.
always understood the perspective from working on that side of the coin as well. But typically, obviously, what I do on a day-to-day basis is very different. I mean, first and foremost, in trying to run this company, like I'm wearing a lot of hats. I'm doing accounting and finance and taxes and all that super fun stuff. So I have to carve out time for that. But I think more importantly, I just have to be more creative, more efficient. I don't have millions of dollars to blow through in ads on Facebook or YouTube to get awareness or to educate people about what we're doing. So we have to do something that breaks through, or we have to create ads that work at a really low cost per acquisition. So it just really comes down to trying to be creative, trying to figure out how you can do the same things big companies do for less. Like that's ultimately what it is about a venture backed business. How can I acquire that same user that Google is looking to acquire or
Mm.
retain for whatever reason and do it for far less money? Again, some of it just goes back to I'm doing something that Google isn't, providing value that Google isn't. And so that is one obvious way to pique someone's interest. But even if I'm doing something different, like there are a lot of people competing for that time. And so I need to think about, okay, how do I resonate? What does my messaging need to be? What does my customer want to hear? What is most important to them? What, what show do I need to really lean into? So it is really always trying to, honestly be creative about what we're doing and testing and reiterating. So you take a swing, you see if it works. More times than not, it does not. And then you go back and test again, and you hope you find something. And at least in our it's been 3 years now. We test and iterate. We find something that works. We go all in on it, and it probably works for I don't know 3 to 6 months, and then it fizzles out, and you have to go back to testing and iterating again. Now, some of that is just hey, we haven't nailed down product market fit, so that's part of it. But I think some of it is this economy is just moving, especially since COVID. Things have been
Yeah.
very interesting, very up and down, things constantly changing. So I think that's a part of it. And so I think a lot of companies are always just having to rethink. I mean, for the better part of 2020 and 2021, it was all about, hey, go all in on Facebook ads, go all in on YouTube ads, and you'll be able to get users. And that's what was happening. And then somewhere at the beginning of last year, it was like, whoa, everybody's like, whoa, this costs too much. Everybody slow down. Let's figure out how we can organically acquire people, how we can do things just by creating content on TikTok or
Yeah.
writing blogs or whatever it may be. So I think this economy is going to go up and down like that, where certain areas of the attention economy are going to get flooded, and then people are going to go scrambling looking for the next place. People will flood that, and people will scramble elsewhere again. And it's probably going to happen in faster and faster cycles. I think great companies will figure out how to get out of those cycles and find areas where nobody is at, and try to really dominate that. But I think in most cases, people will see what you're doing. Your competitors will see what you're doing, and they'll follow you there, and they'll flood that space and kind of force you to figure out the next thing too.
I mean, such is the nature of business, though. So,
Yeah.
what does success then look like for Black Oak TV? Like, what's not maybe not an end goal, but what would make you feel like, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing?
I mean, ultimately, if we can just get to an area where we are regularly creating fresh, new, quality content that features Black people and Black characters and tells amazing Black stories, and that in turn can builds up a library where we have lots and lots of shows and films with that, and we're able to do that profitably. That's my goal. That's the first goal. Like if we can get to that point where we are regularly turning out new stuff, building up a library of amazing content, and figuring out a way to do that profitably, that is our goal. from there, we hope to do a lot more. Like we hope to um, you know, be, create stuff like what you see on HBO and on Netflix, and to, really build a community. I think one of the major reasons I've always thought Black Oak TV could work is because Black people have a unique presence. Well, Black people have, first of all, have a unique way of communicating with one another, obviously, but then also have a unique presence online, right? There's Black Twitter, the comments that happen on these, Black centric YouTube sites are amazing. You have things like um, you have these gossip sites and things where we just talk, and in a very fun and entertaining way about silly stuff. And so I think there's just a lot of community and conversation that could be had around TV shows that, again, I think we used to have in person, but now that's transitioned online, and I think we can be a home for that. So, yeah, I really just think we can build a community around this. I think we can actually move into physical areas of the medium. So whether that be, distributing movies and theaters, whether that be having events and film festivals and meet and greets and all those types of things, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to, have TV shows and film available on streaming on demand at the center of what we do, but branch out into these other things that delight our customers, especially our most fervent ones, and allow them to feel like they're a part of something, and can experience that from time to time.
That's pretty cool. Whenever you think about the future of Black media in particular, do you think that the strive should be to try and break through the more traditional route, or is it going to be found in something like Black Oak TV? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's both. I think it's very important to have people in the system that are, doing the work of finding the best content and bringing their unique perspectives to the table. So, whether you're a white person, black person, brown person, whatever, would bring your experiences to the places where these decisions are being made, and use that to be reflected in the content that you have. And if people are doing that, and if you have, representation in all of these rooms, then hopefully that means we can see changes in mass media where those stories are getting told at the biggest of levels. Because the one, I, when I think about Black Oak TV and like what it actually can do on societal level, again, being a student of this industry, I understand how much the visuals and the stories that are told actually affect how people think about other people. There are parts of America where the only Black people they see are the ones on television. And
Mm.
so if they are not, if the stories are slanted or missing, then their understanding of Black people is going to be wildly out of place. And so with Black Oak TV, obviously our goal is to reach Black people. And by the way, the images they see on TV of themselves reflect how they feel about themselves. Like there are tons of stories about that. And so I think we're affecting that on a societal level, or that is our goal, to affect that on a societal level, to tell the type of stories that allow Black people to feel seen and feel like they can be them true selves in the world, and feel confident about that, because they can see themselves, you know, in certain settings doing amazing things in a fictional world. Like that's actually very important to both kids and adults. But if it's just Black people feeling better about themselves, and not, everyone else also being more accustomed and in tune with Black people and their lives, and the stories that they have, then I think that's only us solving half of the problem. So we need other people out there at ABC, at NBC, at Netflix, also making sure that Black stories are being told for the masses, so that non-Black people and Black people alike are getting to see more of this content. And it's not just siloed in these places where people just go to get what they want.
Did did you have particular experiences like growing up that is driving that passion? And I ask because what you mentioned struck a tone with me because I grew up in very rural West Virginia. So
Mhm.
there was very little black representation in my life. And a
Mhm.
big piece of that was like we talked earlier about, I grew up in the 90s as well. So like when you see the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or, shows like that, the Cosby Show, like that was the only representation I was seeing of what it meant. A lot of what I was told that I was supposed to be was from other people in the community that weren't black. And
Right.
it's like that's a powerful message that, growing up today, there's outlets that you could find stories for people that look like yourself. So did you have particular things growing up, or was it just that you felt like there was something missing, like I'm not seeing myself represented in what I'm watching?
You know, I don't know. I guess I would ultimately just have to say it was probably a product of the places I grew up. I mean, I was born in Hampton Roads, a very black place that was, very prideful of that. And, it came from a very strong black family. We moved to the DC area and PG County that had a large population of black people. But I think the interesting thing was, and I moved to Texas in the latter part of my childhood as well, but it was the same thing where, I had a lot of black people in my family life and to some extent my community life. But when I would go to school,
Mhm.
I was surrounded by white people, and I think that perhaps subconsciously, um, just all made me appreciate the black community because I guess I just saw firsthand like how different my home life, my community life was from the people and experiences I was having at school. And I actually, did fine in school. I got along with everybody. So it wasn't like I was having a bad time, but I saw the differences. And then I think as I grew up, especially in high school in Texas, and, I went to a high school where maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, 4% of us were black. Like, we found each other, we found solace in each other. And by the way, I would say almost none of my friends had any issue with other people or making friends outside of us, but there was something about us coming together and just, again, probably uniquely realizing that, the things that we celebrated at home, the TV shows we watched at home, the boxers we rooted for some
Yeah.
reason, some of the events that happened in the 90s, whether you're talking about Rodney King or OJ Simpson or Michael Jackson, these things that kind of divided us racially, they were talked about one way at home and talked about another way in public. And so, I guess to some extent, me and maybe others, internalize that stuff. And again, it's not that it necessarily made me feel different or, you
Mhm.
know, um, any type of way or, necessarily not even necessarily feel any type of way about white people per se, but it just made me always recognize the beauty, the uniqueness in our stories, in our lives, and the way that we do things. And I, and I think I got to celebrate that on TV a lot. And I think as I got older and those shows went away, I just found myself wanting for more of that, looking for more of that, and over time not finding it. And I guess that's how we end up where we are today.
I appreciate you doing that because articulating that uh, helps me as well. Because, like you said, it can be sensitive, especially for people listening. It's like when you say something like, "Well, I grew up and I didn't see any other black people." It's not that that was a bad thing. It's just
Mm-hmm.
whether subconsciously or overtly from others, you are told that you're still different, and to not see
Right.
that represented is what can become like. It's like, well, am I alone in this almost? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but so I appreciate your take on that as well. But then, how did you find? I mean, it sounds like through the strong family and community. I mean, you obviously found success in life. I mean, you went to Columbia for school, right? So you've done well and all that. How do you think that like it's that background that helped you do that, or was it trying to prove something? Like, what helped you kind of find success on your way up?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's just the foundation. My family was always strong on education, that is for sure. And so I thought about going to college from an earliest of age, and was that was always at the back of my mind when trying to get the best grades that I could get. And so yeah, I would say that was just schooled into me at home from very early on. And I was always, one trying to do well in school, get good grades, and excel in those ways. And probably a bit of an overachiever here and there. Um, that's probably stopped at some point somewhere in college, but
Yeah,
for a while at least. But yeah, it was yeah, and then yeah, I think just internally, I think for me, I think I've just always felt like an outsider or an imposter,
hmm,
really. So even when I was probably really good at things, never thought I was as good as maybe I was. And so it was just always me trying to work harder, to be better, um, to do a little bit more. And I think that's afforded me a lot of opportunities for sure. But I think I've learned perhaps later in life that it's really about focus, and finding the I'm not even gonna finding the one thing that you can kind of put your passion behind, your
yeah.
efforts behind, and really just trying to be a master of that thing. I think for a long time I was a jack of all trades, and probably still am, but I'm trying to figure out this streaming thing, this startup thing, and so hopefully I can start to master that in some form or fashion here. So
Is it the media and the content side of it, or is it the business side of it that's your passion and all this?
it's definitely both. It's
Yeah.
definitely both. I think I started off with the goal of I wanted to make content. So, when I was young, I wrote books and stories. I came out of college, I was a journalist. I went into TV, so I worked at ESPN and CBS. I was a producer. So I for a long time I thought, oh, I just wanted to make the content, make awesome stuff. And then I started doing some consulting for companies when the internet was really starting to take off. Around 2009, 2010. And I realized that, I had a great understanding of content. I had a great understanding of the internet, just being a millennial and that kind of being native to us. And I was starting to see with this consulting that I was doing of how valuable that knowledge was to business, and how business was changing because of the internet, and how before, if you wanted to get into the media industry or the business of media, you had to go through a very finite path, you know go to LA, work at an agency, or be a production assistant, or this and that. And the internet was changing that, and it was changing how business was done. It was changing in a way that people that had been in the business for 30 years didn't understand what was going on either. And so I realized, hey, this was an opportunity for me to perhaps explore this other side of it, because I had always been very, mathematically inclined, and
Mhm.
interested in numbers and stuff like that. And so the business side always intrigued me. And so, moving into the media business, I thought was going to be just an awesome way for me to marry my love of numbers and data with making content. And so far it has been.
Was there like one impetus that made you take that leap from, working at a very safe tech job to saying, I'm going to do this on my own and create my own um, media empire here? Like what was it for you that made you take that leap of faith to say, I'm gonna try the business thing?
To be honest, it was always something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Even when I was, working at some of these other places, I was generally doing things on the side, whether it was starting a blog network, running an eBay storefront back in the day. Like I was always doing small things to try and build up those business muscles. Or even honestly, I was just interested. To be honest, it was just more curiosity and like how can you how can you turn an apple into a profit? And so I I love that stuff. And so I think, anytime I've been at any job, I've always been, I've always tried to talk to people there or peek into departments that I'm not supposed to be peeking into so I
Right.
can just learn more about different sides of the business because I knew that, hopefully those would be things that I was tackling when I was having my own business. So, I'd say when I was at YouTube, like I always knew like, hey, I want to do something else. I didn't know exactly what it would be. I didn't know how it would be done. I didn't know financially how I would afford it, but I think that time there allowed me to figure it out, to learn some things, to meet a lot of awesome people. I ended up living in Silicon Valley for a little bit, and so I got to meet a lot of interesting people there as a result. And and then yeah, once I had the idea for what I wanted to do, it was just a matter of time before I decided to leave.
Well, it sounds so familiar, probably for a lot of people, but like I had gone down this road of what I thought I wanted to do, and it was working in corporate finance, and just always had that urge to like do something entrepreneurial or like just kind of the freedom of doing it on my own, or even if it meant less money, I was like I was in control of it, and I thought that
Hmm.
there was something
Yeah.
about that. And now taking this foray into doing the media thing and the content creation has been more of a passion project, like just because I enjoy the conversations,
Mhm.
and then hopefully by sharing stories like yours, somebody can get something from it. But how does somebody like myself do our part to, in your mind, contribute to empowering Black media? Right? Is it just sharing stories, like yours? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I struggle with this because on the one hand, I'm that person. I'm you know, I'm that person who thinks like Issa Rae, right? Like I'm rooting for everybody black. Like I
Yeah.
want to see us win. I want to see us do well. I get excited when I see, P. Diddy make a major move or Beyonce make a major move or Byron Allen or Tyler Perry. Like I get excited about that. A, because like I know, how hard those things are to come by and how rare they are. But also I understand that, the more younger people see things like that happening, the more they can dream, right? And so I appreciate that as well. And so on the one hand, like, I think people should just, give black media a chance
Right.
and see and that doesn't mean just throw your money at them, but try that channel, try that new show, try something interesting, and no more so than supporting black media, what you're really doing is you're supporting black artists, right? Like if a company can see that this little independent film from a young black filmmaker who had $300,000 or less to make it with had some success, reached some audience, resonated with people, that company is gonna try and do that with them again, and maybe give them a little bit more money. So you're supporting black artists when you do that. But on the other hand, I say ultimately it's up to companies to do what they have to do and to provide value and to solve a problem that they think exists out there. Now sometimes that's easier said than done when people are competing with you and Netflix has a strong black lead channel, and BET, which is owned by Viacom, at least for now, they're trying to attract black viewers as well. So it's hard for us to do that, but I think a combination of us really trying to deliver to our audiences what we think they want and testing and reiterating over and over again, that should be the at the fulcrum of it. And then if folks can give that smaller channel a chance, I think that's really all it takes.
What's one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody that's, I think more applicably on the business side, kind of thinking the same way you were, where it's like I've been doing these things on the side, but there's things I want to do more. What's something that people can apply and do to kind of take that next step in their career and their business?
I guess I would say two things. One, just do it. Like just start doing it no matter what, whatever fashion you can. There are so many resources, so many websites and gadgets and things to help you get your business going that it's very hard to say that it's not possible to do what you want to do, even if it's at a small scale, even if it's a fraction of what you really want to be doing. It's very hard to say that there's no way for you to get started. So get started, get going. That's my first thing because that's the hardest step, and you have to do that. The second thing is, if there's something you really need to launch or to take that start and make it bigger or whatever it is. So, if in my case it was, venture capital, in someone else's case it might be a loan or it might be just resources. Go and find somebody who has done what you want to do or close to it or has acquired the resources that you need or close to it and ask them how they did it and ask ask them all the ways they went about getting those resources because I think the truth is most of what in any resource intensive business, anything that requires lots of money or people or stuff, and, sometimes that is the case. Not all businesses are that way, but if it is a business that is that way, largely it just comes when it comes to getting those resources. Largely, it just comes down to asking enough people. Like again, if you and listen, that means you have to be smart. You have to present well. You have to know your stuff. You have to do your research. You have to tell a good story. You have to do your part. No doubt. You have to show up prepared. But if you do all those things and you ask 100 people that are in the business of providing those resources, I think you get it. I think
All
you
right.
get it. And I know, you know, that's easier said for some people than other people, but even then, I think if you ask enough people, and your number might be more than my number, and vice versa. But if you hit that number, if it's 100, if it's 200, if it's 500, you will probably get it. If you have a credible idea and you're a credible person, you will get it. Like there that's the thing about capitalism, that if people are interested in making money and if you can show them how you potentially can do it, there's likely someone out there who will agree with your thesis. If again, it has to make some sense. You can't pitch something that makes no sense, but if you pitch something that makes sense and you've run it by other people and they say it makes sense, pitch it to 100 people and see what happens. I was reading the story about these 20-year-olds who bought a house for $900,000 using other people's money. And it wasn't some scam or scheme. They just went out and they asked like 200 real estate investors, would you lend us $5,000? They got, 16 or 17 of them to get them the money they needed for a down payment. And now they have like, 10 units for the 900,000 bucks. Like it seems so simple because it is. Now it's hard work. There's hard work in that simplicity. It's difficult to do that over and over again, to get rejected over and over again. But if you ask enough and your idea is good, almost certainly you will get what you need, or certainly darn close to it.
No, I agree. And then what's the best way for people to follow you or to find Black Oak TV and kind of follow the journey?
Yeah, just check us out at BlackOakTV. So you can go to our website there, or you can search for Black Oak TV, all one word, on all major devices. So Roku, Apple, Google Play. Search for us there. You can download it. You get a free trial, so you can check out some of our amazing shows. Some really good ones up there, and we're only adding more and more every month. So the service gets better all the time.
It's okay. I can't thank enough for taking some time to shed some light on everything here, and appreciate you being on the show, man.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Jordan. It's great.